The British Empire once ruled nearly a quarter of the world's land, and at the very center of that empire stood one colony above all others: India. Britain built thousands of miles of railways across the subcontinent. But was it truly for India's benefit? They introduced modern courts, universities, and a centralized government, yet millions of Indians never had a voice in how they were ruled. Some called British rule the beginning of modern India. Others remember it as one of the darkest chapters in the nation's history. So, was British rule actually good for India? To answer that question, we first need to travel back hundreds of years, before Britain ruled India. Before the British arrived, India was already one of the world's wealthiest regions. According to the Madison Project database, India produced roughly 24% of global GDP around the year 1700. Its markets attracted merchants from Europe, Persia, Arabia, and China. Indian silk, cotton, spices, and precious gems were famous around the world. But after the Mughal Empire weakened, India became divided into many competing kingdoms. That political fragmentation created an opportunity for foreign powers. Britain didn't arrive with a massive army. It arrived as a trading company. At first, the British East India Company wasn't interested in building an empire. It came to India for one reason: trade. But within a few decades, that commercial mission would evolve into political control. Everything changed in 1757 at the Battle of Plassey. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, the East India Company's victory laid the foundation for British political dominance in India. It was one battle that changed the future of an entire subcontinent. After Plassey, Robert Clive became one of the most influential figures in British India. Trade was no longer the company's only objective. Controlling territory had become just as valuable as controlling commerce. Year after year, British influence spread across the Indian subcontinent. Some regions were conquered through military campaigns. Others entered the empire through treaties, alliances, or political pressure. Many Indian rulers accepted British protection to preserve their own kingdoms. Others resisted fiercely and fought to defend their independence. The result was a patchwork empire built through both negotiation and conflict. As British authority expanded, new forts and military bases appeared across India. With disciplined troops and strong logistics, Britain tightened its control year after year. By the late 19th century, Britain was no longer just a trading power. It had become the government of British India. In 1877, Queen Victoria became Empress of India. According to Britannica, the title marked Britain's direct rule after the East India Company. Railways, ports, and telegraph lines connected distant parts of India. They strengthened both trade and British administration. India became known as the jewel in the crown, but that title came with benefits for some and enormous costs for others. Britain invested heavily in India's railway network. According to Britannica, it became one of the largest rail systems in the world during the colonial era. Railways connected distant cities faster than ever before. They carried passengers, soldiers, and enormous amounts of goods across the subcontinent. Telegraph lines transformed communication across British India. Messages that once took weeks could now travel in just hours. Britain also founded modern universities across India. Many future lawyers, engineers, scientists, and political leaders studied there. British courts introduced a unified legal system across much of India. Many legal principles established during that era remain influential today. But these impressive projects raise an important question: who benefited the most from this modernization? Massive bridges crossed rivers that had once divided entire regions. They improved transportation while strengthening Britain's control over the country. Modern ports connected India directly to global markets. Trade expanded rapidly as ships carried goods between Asia, Europe, and beyond. According to historical records, British India developed one of the world's largest transport networks. But infrastructure alone doesn't tell the whole story. Progress often comes with a price, and for many Indians, that price would soon become painfully clear. Traditional Indian textile workshops began to disappear. Local craftsmen struggled to compete with Britain's growing industrial factories. During the Industrial Revolution, British factories produced cloth on an unprecedented scale. Cheap machine-made textiles flooded Indian markets. Cotton, tea, indigo, and other raw materials flowed steadily toward Britain. India became one of the empire's most important suppliers. Then came one of the darkest chapters in colonial India. The Bengal famine would leave millions facing unimaginable hardship. Many historians estimate that between 2 and 3 million people died during the 1943 Bengal famine. The exact number remains debated, but the human tragedy is undeniable. By now, the debate had completely changed. Modernization was only one side of the story. Political divisions became increasingly difficult to manage. Tensions between different communities continued to grow. Across India, demands for self-government became louder every year. Millions believed the time for independence had finally arrived. In 1930, Mahatma Gandhi led the famous Salt March. According to Britannica, it became one of history's most influential acts of nonviolent resistance. Britain still controlled India, but independence was no longer a distant dream. It was becoming inevitable. On August 15, 1947, India finally became independent. The British flag was lowered as the Indian flag rose above the nation. Millions celebrated the beginning of a new era. But independence came with a painful price. The partition of India created India and Pakistan, causing one of the largest migrations in history. Millions of people were forced to leave their homes. After independence, India faced a difficult challenge. It had to rebuild a nation after centuries of foreign rule. The future depended on the choices its people made. India began building its own economy and industries. Cities expanded, factories grew, and new opportunities slowly appeared. The country started creating its own path in the modern world. Decades later, India became a major technology center. Cities like Bengaluru attracted global companies and skilled engineers. A former colony became a rising force in the digital age. India's scientific ambitions reached beyond Earth. According to ISRO, India's space program has achieved major milestones, including successful lunar missions. Space exploration became a symbol of national progress. India's transformation shows a complicated historical legacy. Colonial railways and institutions continue to influence the modern nation, but independent India reshaped them for its own goals. British rule created both achievements and suffering. Railways, education, and legal systems developed alongside economic exploitation. The debate remains one of history's most controversial questions. Today, India is one of the world's largest economies and populations. According to the World Bank, hundreds of millions of people have experienced major economic improvements. Yet challenges still remain. So, was India better under British rule? The answer is not simply yes or no. History shows a story of progress, resistance, loss, and the determination of a nation to shape its own future.